We'll do it, but okay. You got it. See? Same guy.
Pacific camera, that's.
Go ahead and get started. Meeting at 5:30 p.m. And for the pledge. States of America.
Mr. Pettis? Mr. Pettis, can you hear me?
We're ready for roll call.
Okay. Dr. Guyer Shambo?
Here.
Emily Hunt Daly?
Here.
Richard Jones? Leon Sandoval? Ron Ortiz?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Board members. Board president. We'll get started this evening.
Get over here.
Can everybody hear me?
Are you telling me?
Early. Some difficulties, so everybody hang on. Can you hear me now?
You're not loud enough.
Emily. Emily. No. Yes, Steve.
Yes,
Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay. Dr. Guys, you can hear.
Not as loud as it should be.
Dr. Martin, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
Guy, you're kind of low. Maybe you need to turn up your volume.
I did. Thank you.
Oh, Shinabug. Sorry.
I'm gonna try and turn up our microphones here.
You're okay.
Any better?
Yes.
Once again, good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like we lost one of our staff members this week. Weeks ago, a person who's been in the district for many years, different capacities. This is Emily Shermaya, who's working at Laguna Acoma High School. And I'd like to ask everyone to join us in a moment of silence.
Did you say Marilyn Shermaya?
Shermaya, I'm sorry. Adoption of the agenda tonight, for this. Changes. I recommend that we adopt the agenda as presented. So moved. Motion by Mr. Sandoval, need a second?
Second,
Second by Mr. Aye.
hold on, guys. You're really cracking up, Mr. Perez. I don't know if it's yours or,
You're not audible. Yeah, you need to speak up louder.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
You have to speak louder.
you're really breaking up when you speak.
The adoption of the minutes. Determined for those was recommendation. President Board, I recommend that we adopt the minutes as presented this evening. Need a motion for the adoption of the minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Hunt Daly. Need a second? Second. Second by Mr. Sandoval. All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Superintendent, it's really hard we heard you, but it's really hard to hear Ron. And he's breaking up really bad, so I don't know, it must have to do with your microphone.
Yeah, President Ortiz, I cannot hear you. I do not know whether you called for the vote or not.
I did. Dr. Dice, can you hear me now? I'm closer to the mic.
There's just a lot of background noise or something,
Feedback.
feedback of some sort, but I vote aye on the motion.
I myself.
Emily, can you hear me?
Dion, you're breaking up, same thing,
Same thing.
but I can hear Guy pretty well.
I'm looking at it now. Let's see what's going on.
How about the crowd? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear the conference room, boardroom. Okay. I got thumbs up and thumbs down.
Simpkins can't. Ms. Baloo can. Ms. Valdez. Can you hear us, Ms. Valdez?
Yes, I can hear you.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Use your right hand thumb.
There you go. Lorraine, can you hear us? Ms. Sandoval?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Now it's getting better.
Can you hear me now? Better?
Mr. Pettis, would you say something, please?
Yes, hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think it's Ron's mic.
Yeah, it needs to move.
So,
Go ahead, say something, Ron.
David, can you hear me?
It's really still a lot of feedback breaking up. I don't know why I can hear Mr. Max, but it's really hard to make out what you're saying.
Emily, can you hear me?
I can hear Dion. I think it's only Ron.
Can you hear me now?
Still same
Ms.
feedback
Valdez, can you
going.
hear me? Ms. Valdez, can you hear me? Thumbs up, okay. Dr. Guy?
No.
I can't either.
It's my just my.
Switch with Mr. Perez. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The mic is what it is. Let us, give us a few minutes and we'll figure out what we're going to do here. Let me do that. I'm going to share the mic with Mr. Sandoval. Can you hear us now?
Yes,
Dr. Guy?
yes,
Yes.
much better.
Okay, let's move on. Recognition. Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board. Thank you all for your patience. First, I'd like to recognize a couple of students this evening. We're informed that we had one from Iran, one from Fidero. And they showed they displayed some good respect and responsibility this week. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize them. So first, we'll start with Milan Elementary and Ms. Faraz. I believe you're here to share a little bit about the student.
Good evening, Superintendent Perez, Mr. President, and board members. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Very well.
Very well.
Madeline Baca is a fourth grader at Milan Elementary in Mrs. Amanda Valdez's classroom. Last Thursday, when the district lost internet service, Madeline stepped up as a leader in the virtual setting. When the teacher was no longer able to communicate with the online students, Madeline instructed the class to finish their assessment they had been working on, log on to Lexia, or finish up any missing assignments. After lunch, when the internet situation was not yet rectified, all of the students logged on at their usual time, and Madeline taught the math lesson using the PowerPoint Mrs. Valdez sent her, and she also made sure the students knew to do their assigned homework. Mrs. Valdez expected to reteach the lesson the following day, but to her surprise, when she checked their classwork that evening, the students completed their homework with high accuracy, meaning Madeline did an excellent job as the stand-in teacher. Mrs. Valdez stated that it was because of Madeline's heart, hardworking attitude, and not being afraid to step in that saved the day. At Milan Elementary, we are not only proud of Madeline, but we are proud of all of the students in that class who were respectful and stayed logged in to continue their learning because they knew the high expectations Mrs. Valdez and her student teacher, Ms. Romero, had set forth. This experience taught the kids how to be resilient and look for ways to problem solve when things don't go as planned. We appreciate the board listening to our story of perseverance, and we thank the board for recognizing students within our school community.
Ms. Faraz, before I turn it over, Madeline, we have probably can't see it very well, but we have a certificate to you from the school board, myself, and we appreciate your work there, and very proud of you. And then next.
Thank you.
Yes, Madeline, do you prospective teacher there?
Give her a temporary license.
There we go.
Madeline, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Madeline Baca, and my favorite subject is math, and I like to learn about history.
Wow. Who are your parents?
My parents are Angela Baca and Jason Baca.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Were you scared when this happened the other day?
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
You were nervous, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's the way a lot of us as teachers are. We get a little nervous too. And so now we understand you are a prospective teacher, and I'm assuming Mr. Perez, you and personnel will work out some type of honorary certificate for her.
Pretty good, huh?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't worry, Angela, I've been teaching 30 some years and I'm still scared every time I go to class.
Thank you, guys. That's great. Leon?
The next one is students from Fidero. We have Ms. Carrie Baloo.
Carrie?
Good evening, Mr. Pettis, Mr. President, and board members. Thanks for having us tonight. I wanted to recognize one of our second grade students. His name is Jace Ontiveros. Jace, can you give a little wave so everybody knows where you're at?
Wave.
He's a little shy, but I wanted, there you go.
That's
There you
good.
go.
That's good.
So on Thursday, when our internet went out at Cabero, Jace was in Miss Martinez's PE class, and he said that all of a sudden, Miss Martinez went away and the whole class was just waiting for her to come back. And when she did not come back, he decided that he was going to teach the PE class. And so Jace found an exercise video, which he played, and he took over. He taught PE class that day for Miss Martinez. And when I heard that story, I was so proud of him because he's a leader, and he knew that that Miss Martinez wasn't coming back. We were having internet issues, and he took the lead and he stepped right in there and took over. And so we're so proud of him that he took the initiative and that he showed what a good leader he is. And so I would just like everyone to honor Jace tonight for showing that leadership and taking over when they didn't have a teacher.
Fantastic.
Very good.
Jace. Good job, Jace. Good job.
Good job.
Yeah, man, that's all right. Telling you, another honorary certificate for a teacher is super amazing.
Good job. We have a certificate for you too, Jace. So
Jace, what are your parents' names? Who are your parents?
My mom's name Kira and my dad's name Jacob.
Hey, all right, Jacob. That's pretty good. Okay, you should lead the PE, the exercise classes at home too, because we all need that exercise. But great, it's super work. Carrie, great work.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Chase. We need more students like you in class, and another prospective teacher there.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Sorry, I have bad internet.
Okay,
All right, thank you all.
Thank you
see you
very much.
guys later.
Okay, so next up, Mr. President. Ms. Sandoval, are there any citizens to address the board?
Yes, we have one citizen. Her name is Arceli Flores Ramirez.
There she is.
Okay, Ms. Ramirez, just remember the board cannot respond to any of your comments or questions. We'll give you about 3 minutes to address the board, and if you have any concerns or questions, we'll turn it over to Superintendent Perez, and he'll get back with you. Okay? With that, you can go ahead and start.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, and members of the board. My name is Araceli Flores Ramirez, and I am a senior from Valencia High School. I'm a youth advocate for tobacco-free schools.
Oh,
For
yes.
the past 2 years, I have been supporting the 24/7 campaign, which helps New Mexico schools adopt, implement, and enforce comprehensive tobacco-free policies. In December of 2020, I gave a presentation to the board about how Grant Cibola could update the district tobacco policy to be 100% tobacco-free. The board was very welcoming and seemed interested in making the changes. We understand that districts have been working hard to meet the many needs of students and staff this past year. But now that districts are considering reopening the doors to in-person learning, we wanted to bring this issue back to your priority list in order to protect the health and well-being of students and staff. As a reminder, here are the required items that need to be updated in order to make the tobacco policy 100% comprehensive. Include the word distribution as a prohibited action with tobacco on all school property and off-site school events for students, staff, and visitors. Include the word possession as a prohibited action with tobacco for visitors on all property. Prohibit all tobacco advertising. Mention that tobacco-free signage will be posted around campus. Include a communications plan to alert students, staff, and visitors about the tobacco policy. mentioned that the district will provide referrals to cessation resources to help students and staff overcome tobacco addiction, and update discipline protocol to include progressive and supportive measures for students, with opportunities for tobacco education and counseling. If the board adopts these changes, 24/7 will provide all schools in the district with tobacco-free signage and toolkits, and will share a press release with local media about the vote. As a high school student of a neighboring district, I would love to see this policy updated, because it's estimated that about 1 in 3 New Mexico high schoolers uses e-cigarettes or vaping products. But I believe we can help lower this. By adopting 24/7's comprehensive tobacco policy, Grant Cibola can keep campuses free from the harmful influence of tobacco. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. If you'd like to take the next step with the policy, please reach out to our campaign manager, Raquel Mooring. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Flores, for this. Appreciate your comment. Presentation continues today. We want the update. Yes, sir, Mr. President, board. I would like to share my screen. Okay, so to begin with, as everybody knows, it was publicized by the New Mexico Public Education Department that the districts were expected to make some changes by April 5th. With that, we've got some information to the board so that we can continue to go through the journey that we started a year ago, last March, about this time. So I want to go through several items, and these items are pretty much directly from PED, but are very much in line with our district reentry proposals that we've been sharing throughout the last several months. So here's what the state is looking at and expecting. Again, this is coming directly from a lot of their language. Students are eligible to return to the building each day. We're talking about April 5th again. Safe protocols, practices are still in place, and schools must practice social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Adhere, we will still be expected to adhere to face covering and hygiene requirements. We must establish and maintain communication with local and state Department of Health officials, which we do, and that's which I've been informing you all for several months now. We must follow the protocols in the New Mexico Public Education Department's toolkit, which we do. There's a link on that on our website. Watch that closely and the changes therein. It's important that families know that we can continue to choose. Families can continue to choose to learn remotely. It's important that we continue to respect tribal public health orders and consult with the tribes throughout this. High-risk staff exemption will remain in place until 2 weeks after their final vaccine dose has been made available. COVID-safe practices, CSPs, that's a reminder. We've talked about this more than a few times. But this is the part that remains in place. Masks, we do have masks for students and staff available, and they're expected to wear them at all sites. 6 foot social distancing. is still an expectation to the greatest extent possible. Ample cleaning supplies and daily sanitation protocols are in place. Hand sanitizers are available. Soap and supplies in bathrooms. We must and will comply with indoor air quality standards. We do have available PPE for all students and staff. We do have isolation rooms designated at all schools. Protocols and signage for the entry into the building are there at the schools. Signage about prevention practices are at the sites. Protocols for students exhibiting symptoms on buses before entry. Lunches, mealtime at schools is key areas of safety. Schools must and will continue providing meals both in person and to the remote students. That is not changing. That'll continue in the fashion that we currently have it. Schools must conduct meals, snacks, and drinking outside of as much as possible, to the greatest extent possible. Surveillance testing. Staff are expected to continue to get surveillance tested. We are now currently in yellow. So if you see for schools in green or yellow, there's a 12.5% per week random testing. So that testing will continue. Staff that is fully vaccinated after 2 weeks of their flu vaccination are no longer in the surveillance testing group. Was asking us what we're doing as an elimination. That's shared with us. We would all prefer students to remain virtual at the time of our last meetings with them. The New Mexico Public Education Department expectation is that the transition to full reentry for all students takes place by April 5th. Considerations. Students continue to have the option to remain virtual. Executive orders of the tribal offices are respected. COVID-safe practices remain in place. Important pieces. So that is what I have to share this evening, Mr. President. Board. I see. Thank you. Not only are the meals a big challenge, but the transportation is as well. Now, currently, we have a lot of students on campus, and currently we are delivering meals and serving meals on campus. So all those challenges are already becoming the reality. We don't know. We've been gauging from the principals that are surveying how many students we believe will be returning after April 5th. So far, it doesn't appear that at the elementaries there's going to be a huge increase. At the secondaries, we're probably going to see a lot more students back based on the information that we're given so far. So yes, sir, there are challenges. Have you heard on the social distancing on the 6 foot 3 feet? Excuse me. Yes, sir. Mr. President Boyd, so yes, the 6 foot social distancing is still being pushed, advocated, encouraged. The newest language that I've been hearing the last week is that it is 6 foot or to the greatest extent possible. So, and in the conversation with the New Mexico Public Education Department present, there were questions like, if you don't have enough space in a certain area to 6 foot socially distance, then you can narrow that some. They were given no exact numbers of how much lower you can or should go, but it's the language is to the greatest extent possible. Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, I know you went over what are our, what's the data from our current 2 weeks that we've been in the hybrid model? Exposure, school closures, that sort of thing.
President, so since we opened up in hybrid, we've had 2 student cases. They did not derive from the school site. Both of those student cases were, we believe, have been contracted off the school site. But since the students were on campus, we had to take the appropriate measures. So there have been 2 cases like that in which 2 groups of students had to not be at the site in that particular space for 14 days. And that too has changed now to 10 days as of about a week ago. So it's no longer 14 days, it's now 10 days for quarantine.
So did we have any school closures?
No school closures. We closed Ms. Hunte, we closed a wing of a school, but not the entire school.
What are the other vaccinations?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hernandez, Sonia. Are you on?
I don't see her.
Can you hear me?
There you are.
All right, good evening,
you give us-
everybody. Yes, what was your question again?
After vaccinations, we have a number of staff that have received the first, second, and who, how many staff have refused?
As far as I can, sorry. Can you still hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, as far as first vaccinations, I could honestly say our district of that, one of the vaccination has been at it's about 90% has received the first vaccination. And as of last week, when we were doing the second doses of that same list, there was 149 that have received their second doses. And then it's 2 weeks past their, what they consider fully vaccinated.
And do we have staff members that opted out from both vaccinations?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
We have staff that refused the vaccinations?
Not refused, but that just declined at this moment, and their reasoning has been just waiting on more data. Because at this time, vaccinations are not a requirement. So this is totally volunteer.
So, Mr. President, Sonia, you said 149 got their second shots. What's that? And that is a percent of what? Because the first one
370.
you said 90% the first, then you switched over to a number. What's the percent that got the second?
At this time, I did not do the percentage. We were, as of last week, the toolkit from the state, they changed the requirements for what they considered fully vaccinated. And they had, you put, if you were 2 weeks post your second dose, that's what you consider fully vaccinated. And so we did the count of the staff that we had of the list, and we went back of the staff that we knew of their second dose, the date of their vaccination, So we went from that date and counted 2 weeks past from their second dose, and that's how we came up to that 100 and it's 145.
145.
Mm-hmm.
What is the actual count for the first? You said 90%.
So I did approximate because we either we couldn't get a hold of the employee to get the exact date, or the date was not in the New Mexico statewide immunization information system. So to get an exact count, we had some of that, so that we had to go against because the dates for the second dose wasn't in there into the New Mexico SIS, or we couldn't get a hold of the staff member to get the second date. So we had originally that we had 370 employees that wanted the vaccination when we were going to have that clinic back in January. So we had that list. So we were going by that list, and we had their phone numbers also.
Well, what's the total population of staff and of employees?
It's approximately 550.
So out of 550, we had 370 who indicated they wanted to have the vaccinations.
Correct.
And so I'm not clear on where the 90% came from. Was that 90% of 370?
Yes, that was my approximate because of all the information, because we were going by all of the numbers that we received. We have our health assistants and our nurses at the school sites, and every week we check in with them who want the vaccinations, who received the vaccinations, and when they got the first vaccination, when they received the second vaccination. We've been updating that. They also put it on a email to me so that we can keep the list updated. So I haven't had a chance to fully get down to an exact percentage per the district. So I apologize if I have the percentage incorrect. It's not accurate because it's just my guesstimate from all the information that I've received. So what I go by is from the list that wanted the vaccinations, from the list that we get from our health assistants.
Okay, Mr. President, Mr. Archambault. Really, well, 550 employees. So originally, like this, so mentioned that we had 370 lined up to at that point to actually be at the high school to have the vaccination. Of course, the supply was not there, so we had to shut that down. So now that 370 people that wanted the vaccination actually grew. There were more after that date. There were more staff that wanted the vaccination, more than the 370. I think it was around 400. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sonia. And then from that 400 that wanted the vaccination, we're down to just, I believe, 10 or 12 that still want the vaccination that have not been able to get it for whatever the reason may be. And then the other part of this, I'd like to just make sure that the board knows is it's a little bit elusive. It's a little bit tricky sometimes because all the information that we get is voluntary information. We have to abide by the HIPAA laws, and we can't dig for the information or ask people for that kind of information unless staff is willing to give it. So just like to share that part of it.
That is correct. We've had some of them that were undecided at the time when we were going to have the clinic. More people have wanted the vaccination, so we've just added them to the school list and the department lists. So not only do we offer this for our school sites, we offer it for every department in our district.
Comments, discussions?
Okay, Mr. Perez, this is Ms. Daly. Of those teachers or staff that opted out of the vaccine due to waiting for more data and information, and their teachers are they going to have the option to teach virtual? Or are they going to, you're going to require them to make a choice to stay on board or to retire or resign if they opt out of the vaccine?
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. So that's a big question that a lot of people have had throughout the state. It becomes, that is a very legal question. And at this point, we do not have the authority to require that a staff member takes a vaccination. We can require that staff get tested in the surveillance testing, but we cannot require a staff member gets vaccinated. So therefore, we do not have, we don't have any say so in the employment that's related to that. The employment matters.
So how do we accommodate them if they're a teacher and they want to still teach virtually, but her or his classroom is still full of students?
Well, that is one of the
That's $1 million question, huh?
question. But at this point, all staff are expected to be at the school sites and their workplaces. And I think for the most part, they're there, with exceptions. And the rest are case by case. If there are extenuating circumstances, we do review that through HR. But we are expecting, since we're expecting, the state is expecting most students to be back. We also have to have the staff. It's we haven't had up to now any real major issues with that. And we hope that it'll continue that way.
Mr. President, can I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Okay, we can't ever, I don't think, they're free to not take the vaccination if they want to, and they could still come to school, always. I mean, they're free Americans. You can't infringe on them and make them take the vaccine. If they choose not to take the vaccine and still want to come teach or come work, that's on them, not on us. Even the thought of saying that they have to retire if they don't take or resign to take if they they decide not to take the vaccine, that's tyranny. You can't do that. We're free. That's not $1 million question. We're free Americans, and our staff are free Americans. Nobody's going to require you to take the vaccine, talk about a scary thought. You have to resign or retire if you don't take the vaccine. No, I can't even imagine that way of thinking. People don't want to take the vaccine because of how their choice or how they feel. It's not the school board's duty to tell them they have to. To me, I can't even, like I said, I can't even fathom thinking that way. And I'm extremely excited that we're going to bring all the kids back to school who want to come back to school. And I've been traveling all day and listening, and I think the CDC is going to come out with 3 to 6 feet. They said that today. It's not anything official, but I think they're going to rein the 6 feet into the 3 feet is what it sounds like to me. That's all I got right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. Is Vance Lee on tonight? Mr. Vance, are you on? Something I can answer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm on.
Okay, I still have a question on the air accreditation. I've had a number of calls from us. I want to make sure that on the upper levels, the 3 classes
at the mentions, are those corrected before we start sticking our students in there?
I didn't hear that. You're breaking up terribly.
What's the status of the filtration of the systems in the schools?
High school
The air
upstairs.
filtration.
What's the status of the filtration?
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Perez, the air filtration units are installed in all of the student areas. As a matter of fact, we've got them out at Laguna right now. But all of the other schools that are operational at this point, they have the filtration units in their classrooms.
Those are mobile units?
Pardon?
The mobile units?
They are mobile, yeah, and the number of units is determined by the square footage of the classroom.
Are the upper classrooms in the high school, are they taken care of? I've heard of a number of maybe 3 classrooms having some issues up there.
I'm not aware that, I would need to hear that from a principal, making me aware of that, and we could definitely get more and get that taken care of. So there doesn't seem to be a long lead time on that equipment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Appreciate that. Any other comments, discussion from the board? Okay. I'm going to just ask a question for Mr. Perez on the communication part on the reentry plan. Were we ever briefed or asked for input from the state, or did we do everything by ourselves?
Input from the state?
From the state, they did not call us to get any input or brief us on anything.
No, so, Mr. President, board, this is the change. I have to say the prior change was a kind of a surprise to us because all of a sudden we knew that we had to get to making the decision pretty quickly because that was given by the state. And I know that at that time we believe there was very short, if not any notice. This time, I know that everybody out there found out about the same time I did that things are going to change and targeting April 5th as the date for the change. And I don't think that we had any input in that. The decision was made when it came to us. And so we were made to adjust to those decisions.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I read on different newspapers about school boards were shocked about, April 5th and opening up. So I just wondered if they communicated with us. It didn't seem like they did with anybody. And it seemed like the school boards were a little upset that the state didn't brief them or ask for any input of any kind.
Yeah. And Mr. President, yes, that was a frustration with the meetings I've been in with superintendents. And it was expressed to the PED in those meetings that we weren't happy with the amount of notice.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Or the amount of input, sir.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. Action items tonight. Consideration of approval to update the reentry status. I need a motion.
I'd like to, Mr. President, I'd like to recommend that we approve the update to the reentry status to move to for students to be available for full face-to-face on April 5th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perez. I need a motion. So moved. Motion by Mr. Sandoval, need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. Do we want to do a roll call or all in favor, Mr. Perez?
Probably should do a roll call.
Let's do it.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? Before we move on to the roll call?
What's to discuss? We're going to be, we're required to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we can stop school, can we?
No.
Yeah, so it's just.
Okay. Okay, got a motion. I need a second. I got it by Mr. Jones. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Ms. Hunt.
Thank
We
you.
didn't get hers.
Motion carries.
Emily, you wanna,
I'm gonna say nay.
okay. Okay, action item B, consideration of approval of a 2021-2022 school calendar. I need a motion, your recommendation, Superintendent Perez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board. I recommend that we approve the new school calendar as presented.
Which one?
What? Discuss.
Yes.
Discussion by the board and comments.
Dr. Martin, would you share with the calendar committee how that evolved?
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent Perez. So on March 1st, the calendar committee actually met, and there were two calendars that we were considering, calendars A and B. They're in your packets, but then Ms. Sherilyn Caratini of Mount Taylor Elementary actually came up with a calendar C, and upon discussion with those present in the calendar committee meeting, it's been decided that calendar B be not considered for voting because what the major reason for which is that in August there will only be one payday for teachers, and so that fact made the committee decide not to consider calendar B for the voting of which calendar will be the one to use for this year. So the major difference, so we decided to have staff, each school site and each department in the district to vote on calendars A and C. Calendars A and C are pretty similar to each other. The major difference is that calendar A starts earlier than the staff or teachers actually start earlier with calendar A than calendar C. In calendar A, staff start or professional development starts on August 6th, while in calendar C, professional development for teachers upon coming back start on August 9th. So on your screens, you can see when the start dates are for calendars A and calendar C. Students start on students K through 12 start on August 11th on calendar A. Students K through 12 start on August 12th in calendar C, and pre-K start on August 18th in calendar A and August 19th in calendar C. If you will also notice, calendars A and C differ on September 2nd. In calendar A, September 2nd is a no staff, no student day. In calendar C, September 2nd is a PD day. And the reason for that is the moving the start date for teachers a day required that September 2nd be a what do you call this, a school day for teachers, but not students, because September 2nd is a cultural day supposedly. And then finally, the last difference between the two calendars is April 18th in calendar A is a PD day for teachers, and April 18th in calendar C is actually a school day, or not a PD day. The reason for the PD day being gone in calendar C is because it's already been, because September 2nd is already a PD day, and so we have enough PD days in calendar C to omit the PD day for April 18th. And then the results for each school site and each department in the district, voting wise, is shown on your screen. So for calendar A, we got a total of 201 votes. And for calendar C, we got a total of 242 votes. And so between the two calendars, calendar C is the one that actually won the poll.
Any comments, discussion from the board?
And so this is calendar C, the one that won the votes of all both sites and departments in the school.
Mr. President, I did notice that the superintendent's office voted in favor of calendar A. Was there a specific reason why?
Where's all my staff from the superintendent's office? Sandoval,
Yes, sir.
we looked at it and I think there was a slight difference that we were looking at. So there was no major reason that we chose one over the other. And I think it had to do with just one day that we looked at, a professional development day. And that was our deciding factor.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other comments? For discussion? If not, let's consider approval of the 2021-2022 school calendar C.
I recommend that we approve the calendar.
Motion by Mr. Sandoval, the second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones. All in favor? Aye. Item C.
Aye.
Okay. Action item C, consideration of approval of the 2021-2022 regular school board meeting schedule, discussion from the board. Or comments?
Yes, Mr. President, I do recommend that we approve the regular board meeting schedule for the fiscal year.
Any discussion?
Okay.
A motion by Mr. Sandoval, and a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jones, all in favor?
Aye.
Right.
So after that, just we are voting on the regular school board meeting. There's a motion and the vote is on and second.
What happened to Dr. Guy?
Motion to approve the regular school board meeting schedule.
It's really hard to hear you guys. The breakup is continuous now, even with Mr. Perez, Superintendent Perez. So I have no idea what that last conversation was about.
I was trying to get Dr. Guy back on. I think he lost the internet.
Okay.
And we're just discussing with him that the calendar vote was there. I believe that he wants to have his vote included. Okay, school calendar. C.
Let's go back to the school calendar C. Okay. Okay, we're done with it. Then The consideration of the regular school board meeting schedule is where we're at, Dr. Guy. And we have a motion and a second, and I called for, all in favor, aye. Everybody said aye, and we lost you in there. Okay, I'll let Lorraine know. She probably heard that. Thank you, Dr. Guy. Okay, action item G, consideration of approval of the 2021-2022 open meetings resolution, your recommendation, Mr. Perez?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board, every year we were asked to do this or required to. This year, I recommend that the board approve the 2021-2022 open meetings resolution. Any discussion from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sandoval, need a second. Second by Mr. Archambault, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Okay, action item E, consideration of approval to purchase staff computers. Your recommendation?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board, I recommend that the board approve the purchase of the staff computers as presented.
And the grand total for that is $193,840.70.
Any discussion? I'm sorry.
I didn't hear the amount.
$193,840.70. Did you get it, Edward?
Yes.
We have a motion by Mr. Sandoval, need a second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Jones, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, action item F, consideration of approval to purchase your recommendation, Mr. Perez.
Mr. President, may I do a point of order for you? You're doing voice votes, and what I'm hearing is you're calling out the names of individuals. You have to determine whether you have a majority who voice aye or nay. You can't mix roll calls and voice votes. I know that it's simply because you're trying to make sure everybody votes, but when you call for the motion and you say all those in favor, then you hear the votes, the ayes or the nays. You say all those in favor say aye, and you need to hear whatever you hear. And then you say nay, and then if you figure that you've got enough, then you say the motion passes, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
So,
Or either have a roll call vote for each one or the other.
okay. So, consideration of the student handbooks is done, am I correct?
No, we haven't done that. The staff will be good.
Okay. So we're on letter F. Consideration of approval to purchase student Chromebooks.
Perez?
Recommendation, Mr. Perez.
I do recommend that we approve that action item as presented.
Any discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Superintendent.
Mr. President, I think I have still some technical problems.
Okay, are these additional to the ones we purchased during the summer? Are they for new students, or my understanding was summer purchases or the school first semester purchases was one Chromebook for every student. We're needing additional ones. That is my question.
Yes, and I think Mr. Maldonado and I discussed this earlier. Do you want to share that, Mr. Maldonado?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Board members, and Mr. Superintendent. We do have a fair amount of spoilage, breakage, as well as we found out when we bought all the Chromebooks that we do have some replacements. And we felt it was important to keep a stock of replacements that we could quickly deploy out to the students who were missing them or breaking, and then also for new students who came into the district who didn't have a chance to obtain those when they first came in. So this is a supplemental purchase so that we have enough stock on hand to readily and quickly equip the kids for remote learning.
Thank you, Mr. Maldonado. When you mentioned the breakage, are the ones that, do we have warranties on the existing Chromebooks?
We do. We have warranties, and we also have a contract agreement with the parent for certain cases of breakage or loss that either they would pay for it or the depending on the reason, or the warranty would pay for it. So we have replaced some with warranty. We have done that. We've also billed some parents for replacements.
And are we also having those returned by students that are leaving our school district?
I would say that that's a challenge as we, as students are leaving, we certainly, I think, can do a better job of recapturing those before. But often they leave and we don't know about it until they're gone. In fact, today, one of the secretaries called me today about 2 computers that are now in the state of Ohio or something, and she's trying to recover them because they didn't know that the student was going to be gone. So we consider that as part of that spoilage. There's nothing we can really do. I can't, for $340, we can't really chase after them or send them to collections. So this is the next best thing, having a stock of available computers so that we can replenish as necessary.
Can you put a hold on the records, transfer of records?
I'm going to refer that back to Mr. Perez. I don't know what the policy is.
Yeah, so that's part of the process. That has its limitations too. It's holding the records back from the students, but yes, it's something we're looking into.
Steve?
Yes, sir.
There's 2 different quotes in there, one for 124 and the other one for 92. Are we acting on both of them or one or the other?
There should be one for laptops.
Yeah, it's under the second one for the students. Like I said, there's 2 different quotes.
For staff.
No, there's, if you look,
The staff one was
the staff one was quote number 444, but if you go to the students, there's quote 820 and quote 880.
Let me look at my board packet real fast, please. Just give me a moment.
Steve, if you want, I can answer that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. So,
are we doing both?
yes, they would be both. Then one for $92,000 are for the extra replacement Chromebooks. That's a quantity of about 200. The second quote for 270 is an estimate for incoming students. So in combination together, they total $216,200.
Thank you.
And a total of how many computers?
For both purchases, is that what
Yes.
you're wanting to know for
Yes.
students? For students, replacements and new students would be 470.
Any other discussion? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion for the student Chromebooks.
I make a motion we approve.
Okay,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Action item G, consideration of approval of district match for E-rate 2021 category 2 hardware updates. Your recommendation?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Board, I do make recommend that we approve the the district match for the E-rate 2021 Category 2 hardware updates.
Any discussion?
Like, make motion to approve.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
And Ms. Whiteberg can explain.
Ms. Whiteberg, you want to explain?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So the scope of the work for this upgrade is to maintain the district's 5-year upgrade cycle for our network infrastructure. The hardware that will be replaced includes the wireless system throughout the district and all network equipment contained at each school. We also intend to upgrade the fiber backbone at some of the larger schools to support the increased throughput of the student Chromebooks. Our timeline for if we're approved by the board, we will submit our application to USAC and we will wait for their funding commitment decision letter, which usually hits us in the fall. Once we receive the funding commitment, we'll begin purchasing the equipment and it should take us several months to get all of this equipment installed. It's over 400 items that we will be installing. This does include fiber cabling installation as well. If anyone has any questions that I can clarify. And it's all related to hardware right now.
Any discussion, any more comments by the board? Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Action item H, consideration of approval to accept the FY 2020 audit. Your recommendation, Mr. Perez?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, Board, I recommend to the board that we approve of it, to accept the fiscal year 2020 audit.
Any discussion from the board? We have Byron with us tonight. Any questions or comments? And Mr. Maldonado?
I don't have any questions.
Well, we do have a presentation by Mr. Manning that we need the board to hear. Mr. Perez, can we proceed with that?
Yes.
You want to hold on a little bit?
So, Mr. Manning, do you have documents, or would you like me to pull them up?
I believe he has a presentation he's going to bring on the screen. We provided Ms. Sandoval with a summary. If she's able to provide copies of that summary, that's fine. If not, you can watch on the screen. Mr. Manning, feel free to go.
The screen? This the one?
Yes, sir. That's it. But Mr. Manning's going to share his screen as well.
Okay.
Unmute. Get me off mute. Are you seeing the cover page of your audit report?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. It's a pleasure for Chris and I to be here tonight. It is a requirement now. Most auditors really did present at the board, but there were several auditors who never did. Boards had never heard of their audits, and so they put it in the audit rule that it's required to do a board presentation after the audit's been accepted by the state auditor's office. I know many of you have heard this once or twice, but we'll quickly run through the important parts of it. If anybody has any questions, feel free to stop us at any time. and ask any questions that you might have. Of course, the primary purpose of an audit is to give you an opinion on your financial statements overall, and if they are fairly presented. The audit report that you received is an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion which you can receive and what you're shooting for in an audit. So on pages 4 and 5, you can go to read the opinion on that report. On page 6, you have the statement of net position, which is basically an overview of the district's net position. Down here at the bottom gives the total overall net position of $17,787,960. One of the big things, this is kind of like the giant balance sheet of the district. I'll point out a few things that on it that are just paper number entries. They aren't really liabilities of the district, but the state makes these things be presented. This is the pension and OPEB items, excuse me, for the district, for the state, for the retirement plan, and for the other post-employment benefits for the district. While you're required to put them there, they're not really liabilities or deferred outflows of the district. So I just point that out so you'll know when you look at that what it is. That's the amount of pension that's owed by the state just on the employees at grant schools. On page 7 is your statement of activities. The change in net position for the year was a little over 26 million. Most of that dealt with changes in the pension and OPEB liabilities this past year. They went down significantly, which ended up resulting in an income. Again, it's a paper income and doesn't really matter for the district. One thing, we did have a prior period adjustment of $461,263. That is due to two major items. One is finally getting all the issues with your cash cleared up, cash accounts closed and cleaned. When that was all done, there was about almost $195,000 of additional cash that was actually in the bank that was not on your books. On pages 51 and 52 of the financial statements, it kind of walks through the detail of that prior period adjustments. You might look at that. Basically, those funds were used to close out the deficit cash balances of 23 funds as we tried to work, and the district is working to get rid of all their old dead funds and to get them off the books. And so that was part of it. Another was adjustments for fixed assets as the district got detail on all their fixed assets, and we matched the detail to the financial statements this year. On page 8 is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. The operational fund, the 11,000 fund, is your primary fund that you operate from. Total cash for the operational fund at the end of the year was almost 7.5 million. You get that number technically through three different numbers: this 6 million, this 2 million 4 that was basically loaned to other funds at year end for their deficit fund balances, and then subtracting out this 972,000, which is basically the district wrote checks for all their liabilities at year end, but they really hadn't sent out the checks. So for an audit perspective, we have to put those for ERB, NIPSEA insurance, those things that didn't really get paid at year end back on the books as a liability and add it back in as cash. So that's why you have to subtract it out to get to what the books would say on a cash basis that you have. On pages 11 and 12, you've got your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes of fund balance. This is your income statement in essence by fund. For the year, the operational fund, the expenditures exceeded revenues by about $2.7 million on the year. Overall, that's almost what the district as a whole on page 12. Expenditures exceeded revenues by about 2.5 million before you consider the $4 million bond proceeds that you received on the year. I always recommend that board members spend a little time in the notes to the financial statements. They're on pages 19 to 52. For insomniacs, this is a good way to put yourself to sleep. Read this a little bit at night, and after a few weeks, you might make it through it if it hadn't put you to sleep too many times. But I really recommend board members to spend more time here because it's kind of in verbiage. It explains quite a bit. It'll go into detail, give you a little more information on policies. It'll go into cash, your fixed assets, receivables, all of those things that are important. And as I said, towards the end of the audit, it deals with this prior period adjustment that we talked about. It'll give you some detail on that. We do 3 reports that we talked about, the auditor's report at the beginning for the overall audit opinion. On page 119 and 120, we have the second report we do, which is the report on internal controls. This we do not give an opinion on. This is more of a negative assurance, basically saying we looked at your internal controls and this is what we found. From this point forward, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to walk through the end of the audit, to walk over these 2 other reports and the findings, which of course are the key things. Everybody wants to go right to the back of the audit where the findings are. We make you put up with a little bit before you get there to see them. And since Chris is the biggest one we have on our audit team, we also make him write all the findings. So if you have any complaints, you get to talk to Chris about it. And so we'll turn it over to Chris now.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to go over is the definition of the different levels of findings that we have. There are 3 levels of findings. The most severe being a material weakness, the second being a significant deficiency, and the third being another matter. So a deficiency in internal control exists when the design or operation of a control does not allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect and correct misstatements on a timely basis. A material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control, such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. We consider the deficiencies described in the accompanying schedule of finding and cost as items FS 2018-05 to be a material weakness. So we had 1 material weakness. A significant deficiency is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control that is less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. And we consider the deficiencies FS 2018-07, 2019-03, 2020-01, and 2020-02 to be significant deficiencies. And then the other matters are going to be, these are the lowest level of findings. And that's going to be 2018-06, 1902, 1905, 1906, 1907, 1908, and 2020-01. Okay, and this is our report on compliance for each major federal program. This is where we discuss specifically the single audit programs that we review in the federal programs. And we did not have any federal findings this year. On page 126, you're going to find the summary of audit results. So this is where we summarize the findings that we had. Quickly at the top, it does show that we did have an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion. We did have material weaknesses. We did have significant deficiencies, but there was not any non-compliance material to the financial statements. And then the federal awards, there were no material weaknesses, significant deficiencies noted, and it was an unmodified opinion. And then we list the major programs that you had that were audited. This is the IDAB cluster, the Indian Ed Formula Grant, and Impact Aid. And whether or not the auditee qualified as a low risk. Now, quickly, I'm going to go over the structure of the way that we write these findings. If you do have any questions, feel free to stop me. So the first section is going to be the financial statement findings. These are typically where you will find your material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. They have a designator FS. Then you have the year which the finding first occurred. So this finding here first occurred in 2018. And then we have the title, the internal control over district cash and bank reconciliations. In the parentheses thereafter, we have the level of finding. So this is the material weakness. And since it has been continuously done since 2018, that's what the repeated and modified means. Next, you're going to have the criteria. And this is the NMAC or the NMSA, the New Mexico PED, PSAB, whatever is the controlling rule or statute regarding this finding will be listed. And we will try to, at best, bold, as you'll see there, the J and K are bolded, which we think is the section of the NMSA or the guideline, which directly applies to this finding. The next section will be the condition, and these are the actual conditions of the finding. And we'll list out what we notice. So in this case, during our review of cash and cash reconciliation procedures, we noted the district is not completing bank reconciliations on a monthly basis for all accounts. The general ledger at year end showed a balance of $23,959,288, while the reconciled bank balances showed $24,154,122, difference of $194,834. The district has not been properly entering audit adjustments to cash. The district has many funds which are inactive, which have positive and negative balances in the cash accounts, which need to be closed out. While the new bank accounts which have been opened to clean up the cash are properly reconciling on the year, the district had not cleaned up the general ledger accounts for the old bank accounts that had been closed. The district had $27,917 in stale dated checks, and totals do not properly tie to the financial cash reports of the state. Now, directly after that, we're going to state on how this year's findings relate to the prior year. So we say in this section whether the district has made improvements, whether there's been some regression, or whether it's the same as in the prior year's finding. Next, we have the cause. This is what, in our opinion, we believe was the cause of these findings. The effect is how it affects the district or the financial statements. Then we have the auditor's recommendations. These are the recommendations that we lay out the district take in order to rectify these findings. and remove them. And then finally, you have the responsible officials plan. This is the corrective action that the district has stated that they will take in order to rectify these findings, the timeline for the completion of those, and the employee who is responsible for the implementation of this corrective action. So this is for those of you in governance and for Mr. Perez. If you want to follow up with your staff or this district on what the progress is on rectifying these findings, this will give you a guide as to who it is you would need to talk to and when that correction is expected to be completed. The next finding is 2018-07. This is improper maintenance of fixed assets.
Excuse me, I have a question on that previous slide. It said they corrected by September 2020. We're already past that.
Correct. And so the district's plan was to have this corrected before the end of last year.
And it wasn't. And you're telling us it was
If
not.
Ms. Hunt Daly, if I can interrupt.
Okay.
So the period that's being audited is fiscal year 2019, 2020. So even though we had already started taking corrective action before September, during the period that was being audited, that corrective action had not been fully in place. So you'll see in this corrective action that we did consolidate bank accounts. We did start a regular program of reconciling our accounts, but it was too late to be part of this particular audit. Moving forward, you'll see that these reconciliations are being done in a timely fashion, being filed properly and all of that. So we won't have this finding, at least that's the hope, we won't have this finding during next year's audit, which covers the period that we're in right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Quite
D.
welcome.
All right. So the second finding is improper maintenance of fixed assets and fixed asset certification. And now we're into our significant deficiencies. So the conditions during this, the district did not have an individual assigned to track fixed asset additions during the year. Fixed asset additions were not collected. Depreciation had been not timely calculated for the year, and additions paid by the PSFA had not been timely collected by the district. The district was still identifying multiple assets which were added in prior years, which had not been put on the books yet. And final changes to capital assets resulted in a prior period adjustment of $247,861. And we did not have the board certify its fixed asset inventory in a duly authorized board meeting as required by statute. So in this area, there was some improvements over the year, but during the review of the fixed assets from prior finding that we had, there was a notice that there were still some assets that needed to be cleaned up. The next finding is 2019-03. This is failure to follow bid and RFP procedures. Again, a significant deficiency. And the condition was the district had purchased simulators. These were for your driving ed for the program, but they did not go out to bid or RFP. This purchase price was $102,515. And for one of the RFPs, the district did not run one of their ads in the newspaper more than 10 days before the opening of the bids. This was a simple, I believe it was a 1 day difference. It was 9 days inside of the required 10 days. And for two of the bids, the district did not include residential business preferences in the scoring. The next finding is 2020-01. So these are the current, this would be a current year finding. Excuse me, this was a federal finding in the prior year, which had been removed from the federal finding and into the financial statement findings. This is the improper cost allocation and program director oversight. So this was during a review of the federal programs. The district paid an employee out of the Indian Ed formula grants when the employee should have been paid out of Impact Aid Indian Education. An employee who was assigned to IDAB entitlement had an incorrect pay rate during the year, which wasn't discovered until the employee retired, at which time the pay was corrected for the year. Program directors are not reviewing personnel assigned to their programs. And a student who was no longer in the special education program was still listed on the impact data application, and 22 students who qualified to be on the impact data application for special education were not included on the application. Next, we have 2020-02. Again, this was a prior year federal audit, which has been moved into the financial statements, employee time and effort documentation, and program director oversight. So the district does not have a system of internal control to accurately track personnel costs. This relates to employees who are assigned to one cost program and employees whose time is split between multiple cost programs. Yes? I'm sorry. Okay. Discussion with program managers indicated that they could not certify that employees working in their programs were not used at times during duties at school sites, which would not be allowable duties under their assigned programs. Now, as I stated earlier, there were no federal award findings in the current year. Next, we have the NMSA findings. These are your other matters. These are the lowest tier of the findings. These are typically not germane to your financials, but are generally more a finding due to statute, and they are mostly written because in the state of New Mexico, we have what's called a zero materiality rule, meaning even if we have a singular instance or even a single dollar variance that we're required by the state to list this as a finding, in many states, several of these findings would not be considered findings. And so I always like to make the board aware of that whenever we discuss these findings. So the first one is going to be New Mexico PED cash reporting. So the district's general ledger did not tie the PED cash report. The PED cash report stated a reconciled balance of $22,865,926, whereas the final general ledger balance is $22,861,000 for a difference of $158,213. And 5 of the district's 6 bank accounts not tied to the PED cash report. Next, we have missing receiving documentation. This is one of the more common findings that we have. During our review, we had 1 of 40 items reviewed did not have receiving documentation during your review of normal disbursements. During a review of individually significant, we had 4 of the 43 items, there was no receiving documentation. And we list the amounts there for you to see. Activity disbursements, we had 3 of 25 items. And during credit cards, there was 1 of 4 months reviewed was missing receipts for a hotel stay. Next is 2019-05. This is background checks, contracts, and licensing. In our review, there are 18 of the 40 files reviewed. The district did not have an FBI background check on file. And in 1 of 40 files reviewed, the district modified employees' hours and pay without first drafting a new contract. The new contract was backdated to start at the time of the change in hours, which led to an overpayment of $678.21. I-9 documentation. 2 of the 40 personnel files reviewed, the employee did not sign and date the I-9 form. And in 1 of 40 personnel files, the employee did not sign the I-9 form. 2019-07, this is the improper usage of credit cards. During our review, the district had a credit card which was issued by Grant State Bank, which is contrary to state law. State law only requires the purchase cards to be issued through Bank of America. This card and this account had since was closed fairly early within the audit year. And so this is a finding which will not repeat in the years forward. 2019-08, this is the late filing of the audit report. Obviously, the audit report was not submitted by the November 15th deadline. Next, we have purchase orders and payment authorizations. And this is a finding, again, this is the most common finding that we have due to the fact that the PED puts a more stringent requirement on school districts than any other entity, saying that you must have a purchase order before any monies are encumbered, whereas a municipality only has to have a purchase order before the check is written. And you have several people who are involved or have the authorization in order to obligate the districts for purchase. And so this is one of the more difficult findings to eliminate. So in our review of disbursements, 5 of the 40 items, we did not issue payment within 30 days. One of the other issues under at the beginning of the year were payments not being made within the 30 days allotted, and the district was assigned a couple late penalties. A review of activity disbursements, we had one invoice for $1,100, and it was made before the purchase order was authorized. And during a credit card review, the payment was submitted late and was charged $25. Now, this is the summary of the prior year audit findings, and what you'll see here, this is a list of every finding that you had in the prior year, broken up into the 3 categories: financial statements, federal awards, and MSA findings, and their status as of this year. At the right, you'll see either repeated and modified, or you will see resolved. A finding which has stated that has been resolved is a finding that you had last year, which has obviously been taken care of. And so your resolved findings were the late payment of 941 tax payments, the improper withholding of employer contributions, the failure to follow proper internal controls related to payroll, failure to ensure financial statements are properly stated, your system of internal control under your federal awards, the improper reimbursement request was resolved, cash appropriations in excess of available cash balances was resolved, budgetary controls was resolved, improper cash controls over outstanding warrants. You had improper approval of budget adjustments, improper reimbursement of travel expenses, and late payment of employer contributions. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of your findings from the prior year, which were resolved, which is very good. That's what you want to see as improvement is made over the years. And I expect many of these that were in the current year will also be resolved. Any questions?
Okay.
I'd like to
go ahead.
Mr. Manning and Chris. So I'd just like to emphasize the reduction in the number of findings and the effort. I know that you mentioned that a lot of these have been resolved, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. But I'd just like to emphasize the improvement that was made from the prior year to this audit. The number of audits, if you can just share that one more time. Number of audits and the progress that was made, just in a quick synopsis.
Yes, and this is, as I said, what we're looking for. As everyone knows, we're known as kind of tough auditors in the fact that we, with all of our experience in school districts, having been a finance director myself for 10 years, we kind of know the issues that are out there, the issues that many times schools forget to look at, and we look in all those cabinets and stuff. You've made significant progress on the year. What we would expect, and we were glad to see, and other progress that we saw that was going on with the audit, with the team. There are still things to get resolved. There are still things to get, but they are working on the major items, and that's what you really want to see. You want to start seeing your material weaknesses go to significant deficiencies, and then significant deficiencies disappear overall. And because last year you did have 4 material weaknesses, that was reduced to 1 in the current year. Last year, you really had 7 significant deficiencies between financial statement and federal awards. This year, that was reduced to 4. So you went from 11 major findings to 5 major findings. So you cut that in half. And then your compliance findings down here in this section were also basically cut in half. So we will give a pat on the back to Steve and the business office, Maria, and everybody who has worked through the year, Carol, getting this work. And we expect in a few months when we show up for a prelim, it'll get a little easier. And the biggest thing, we're all committed that, hey, it'll go out on time this year, correct?
Thank you. Any discussion, comments?
Kudos to Steve and the rest of his department. We're definitely headed in the right direction. Just keep up the good job.
Dr. Guy, are you there? I know you want to make.
Yeah, Mr. President, Mr. Perez, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Steve, well done. And tell the staff that remarkable, considering where we were. When did you come in? About 2 years ago?
Yes, it's been 2 years. This is the second audit.
Me,
and Steve. Yeah.
A year and 9 months.
Well, I think both of you came in almost at the same time.
Yes.
But I reviewed them as I did before in the committee meeting, and so what Dion commented on is true. It's a well done job. We do have improvements to make, but we know what they are. We've been continuing to improve the systematic management of our financial operations, and that has really developed satisfactorily. We will continue to pursue this. We have to get started again. Another season of auditing will be coming up on us, but we know what it is that we need to do just by looking at that last sheet and listening to Mr. Manning and what he had summarized for us. So I think that this audit is really a great improvement over the past few years, and I'm glad we're eliminating a lot of those financial issues that have been there for a number of years, ever since 2011, something like that. And we've been cleaning those up, and I'm glad we won't be seeing those again. But thank you again, Mr. President. I'm done.
Mr. Superintendent, again, would also like to express my appreciation to Mr. Maldonado. I know you came in a tough year working with Carol, and I think having the number of findings that we had 2 years ago was just appalling, and you've managed to clean that up. And Mr. Manning, thank you. There's no meaning or definition of being hard or being strict. I said, this is what school districts need, because what may seem like a significant amount of only 198,000 unbalanced. Can you imagine what that would do to a personal checking account if you had that amount? And believe me, I'm a firm believer in reconciling checking accounts every month, and I've seen some businesses that don't do that, and yet that's their cash flow. And so I appreciate all the hard work. I know you spent many hours doing that, Mr. Maldonado, and anything that Mr. Manning or his company can help us with, reach out to them. They seem to to be the experts in this field. And I know it came at a hard price for you. A lot of hours, a lot of stress, but I think you just need to keep up the good job. And we appreciate the hard work. Because if it wasn't for you, we would have never known these findings existed. We would have gone on thinking that everything was hunky-dory, and it really wasn't. So thank you, Mr. Model. Thank your staff for us, and just keep on doing your due diligence. We appreciate it. Thank you.
And that goes for Mr. Perez too. Well done.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, everybody, for a job well done. We appreciate it very much. Well, with that, I'll entertain the motion to accept the. Do we have a motion already? Sorry.
So moved.
We already have a motion, and I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we just need to approve it. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay.
Those against?
Anybody against? Motion carries. Consent agenda, Mr. Perez, your recommendation.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Board, I recommend that we approve the consent agenda as presented this evening.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries. Superintendent report, Mr. Perez.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Board, we had a request to give some information on the graduation report that came out recently. And I'd like to share some information on this. I have Ms. Reina Sanchez and Ms. Corazon to help with this. Because the state recently released the graduation rates for the last cohort. It's in order to understand this fully, we have to understand that it's a 4-year cohort graduation rate. In other words, 9th grade students who are counted and are still being counted at the end of the 4 years and graduate gets us to the number here for the ultimate graduation or the final graduation rate. So we pulled up the 4-year cohort data, a 3-year trend. And with Ms. Sanchez, are you on? Or Ms. Barsana?
I'm here, sir.
Okay. So Ms. Barsana pulled the numbers for us. So as you can see, 2018, the cohort is 62, 67. The last one we just received a few weeks ago was 70.4%. Although it's an increase, we're still not satisfied with it. I won't be satisfied until we're in the 90 range or close to 90s. And we do have some work to do. I'm also concerned that some of the things that we've gone through this last year will have an impact on graduation. We hope not, but we're looking at. And I'm not talking about this year, but in the cohort, any impact that we see based on some of the any kind of impact during the school year, you may not see it in the results until 2 or 3 years later, or even 4 years. So this one is broken up by high school. Laguna Acoma High School, and then you have the total, the Grand Cebolla County schools combined. So the green line is the 4-year cohort, and that is Grants High School, landing at 71.4. The orange line is Laguna Acoma, high school started 73, took a huge drop here, and then back up to the 66.9. The big drop could, because it's a smaller number of students, any small number that exits that 4-year cohort will have a huge impact. So the group size may be partly a cause of the huge shift. Here we have it broken up by subpopulations of Caucasian, Hispanic, Native American, and then all students. The Caucasian is the blue line, Hispanic, orange, the Native American in the green, and then the average of the Grand Cibola County schools in the yellow. And once again, we are not satisfied with not only with the ultimate number, it's pretty much in the middle of the pack if you look at the state, but we have work to do, and I'd like to see, and we will see some improvements in closing the gaps between these subgroups. Graduation rates here, and the pie chart. 2018, this is breaking down the number you saw in the line graphs a little bit further. Population breakdown. Numbers are here. And then the next year, the 2019, the breakdown by ethnic subpops is here. 41% Hispanic, 43% Native American, 15% Caucasian, and 1% other ethnic groups. And then 2020, the same thing, but just the next year later, there were less Hispanic numbers, larger Native American, fewer Caucasian, and other. And this is another similar graph, just in the bar chart form. And here are not just percentages, but the actual the actual student numbers for each of those groups and for each of the years. So that's what we have, Mr. President, board members. Any questions?
These were the students who graduated last May. And so we've already had the COVID effect back in the spring. I knew it was challenging then. Now we have a full year of COVID impact, so it's uncertain as to how that goes. 21 cohort. I think we just need to have the district continue to examine the data, look at the factors, try to figure out what it is that we can do to improve the graduation rates. And but thank you. It is the very first time that I've seen this in this extensive amount. So it's just the first cut at looking at it, and let's continue to examine it and discuss with our stakeholder groups what it is that we need to do to improve the graduation of our students. That's the bottom line, is how many kids graduate, and what do we do to help them succeed after they graduate too.
Thank you. Thank you. Announcements are there for you. Future agenda items, get with you, Superintendent Perez. I'm sorry. Mr. President, I'd just like to add a little bit to the April 7th, the board training. Let's start that at 3:30. instead of the 5:30.
3:30?
Yeah.
Take note of that, 3:30, April 7th. Okay, adjournment, need a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second,
Roll call?
Dr. Guyer Shambo,
Here, aye.
Emily Hunt Daly,
aye.
Richard Jones, Leon Sandoval, Ron Ortiz,
Meeting adjourned at 7:29 PM. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Night.